You've been around music business since you were in the womb, obviously, right? Before birth. How have you managed to dodge the downfalls of most who started in the entertainment business at an early age?
I would say I avoided the downfall of most people in that started music business from an early age because I didn't do music business from an early age. You know, I don't even think I'm doing music business right now. I've never really seen music as a business per se. I know people say that's stupid, but it's a way to live. Yeah, it's a way to make a living, but the business has never been what has driven me. So it has never been really been the determining factor about what I want to do or not do. If it makes big business sense or not. But now, as I grow older, anyway, I'm trying to make some business decisions. Let's get in this game. But it is really not the driving factor. I've always been a musician first, and I've always understood that whatever it is that a man is stems from his desires. A man is what his desires are, or a woman, or whoever. Humans are what their desires are. So my music has always been a way for me to enhance what I want to get out of this world. You know, and that's just what it is because that's what I really know how to do. That's my skill, and I'm using it to the best of my abilities to achieve my innermost desires. You know,
And what are some of those desires?
well, I can share some. Some I can't send me straight to jail. But yeah, I want to see. For me, one of my foremost desires is to live life, truly free. In a way that I have say in my own existence, and I have real action, not the illusion of action. Many people in the world today are content with acting in other people's acts and being content that this is my act. But that's just an illusion of action. You know, if anybody here has read The Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire, we learn that one of the things that truly make us human is that ability to act. And one of the most important duties of our oppressors in the world today is to remove you from your ability to act. Because as a human, we're all here to make history. That is what it is. Everybody is here to make history. You are here to make your mark. And those that rule this world today spend billions of dollars to remove us from that consciousness. And one of my biggest desire is to embrace that part of my consciousness.
Did Jamaican music and the Rastafari movement have an impact on you growing up?
Oh, definitely. As an African kid growing up, or as anywhere in the world, African kid growing up in the Caribbean or in America or in Europe or back in the continent, reggae music was something that also elevated us, in a way that uh, hip hop, Afrobeat, salsa did in South America, and samba, and all this wonderful art that we've created as African people due to our oppression in everywhere we found ourselves in the world. Reggae music is, you can hear it, is that sound of our oppression in isolation. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's the truth. Because the Caribbean is they're so are still far from everybody there, just isolated and and the blues, in America that has given birth to everything that has come here. It's also from that oppression, the pain, to have so little in the midst of many. Oh, it's the blues. you know, and Afrobeat, to rage in your own land. Like, I will not have this in my own land, and everything that we've done has stemmed from, our relationship with this new world that has tried to remove us from our humanity and diminish us, from the status of human into these things that can be used to portray or embellish other people's stories. You understand? this thing that is incapable of creating its own story or its own thing, but is willing to embellish others, and that has not really grown or mature. And we are talking to the oldest people that ever lived, the most mature, the most ancient, the most ancestral, And so for me, our music is not just entertainment, because I understand it to that deepest extent. And that's why for me it's a real downer when our music is only used in the mainstream as a form of escapism, when its strongest attribute is engagement.
Are there any artists from those times that really gave you a vibe? Reggae artists?
Yeah, so Peter Tosh, that's the man. I mean, many people, confuse them for social justice warriors. Like my dad, Peter Tosh, they are not social justice warriors. These are freedom fighters. Music was for them a weapon to bring freedom to this world, the ultimate struggle of humanity. And you often find out that in the fight for freedom, you do a lot of unjustifiable things. That's just the truth, The same goes for Che Guevara, Many people criticize him for his actions in Cuba post the, but in the establishment of freedom and this thing, I mean, it's just what it is. I believe that the two fights are a different field. You either want to be for justice, you are a social justice crusader, or you are a freedom fighter, especially for African people, because we're in such a situation in the world that, as Malcolm X said, is by any means necessary.
I just want to, you brought up a brilliant point, right? I believe because we have a lot of people have the Christian mindset, they believe that they can fight this battle with a moral approach. And the people that they're going against is, in our reality, that's what it comes down to. That's why when you behave in a certain manner, it's like, why are you doing this, even though you're doing it for your freedom?
Yeah, because I also believe that, the people that oppress us in this world also need saving. The destruction of oppression, or the tearing down of the ability of the oppressor to oppress, regardless of what it is, even if it means you throw him in a jail cell indefinitely with no trial, does that mean you are oppressing him, or you are removing him from the ability that he has shown for such a long time to possess, which is the ability to oppress, to dominate, to destroy, to extract, to take away from those that need and give to those that have more than they need? These are questions that we have to ask ourselves as African people. Why are we happy to celebrate Columbus Day in the United States, we Europeans, but we criticize African freedom fighters for stepping on someone's toes? But you hear celebrating Columbus Day, genocidal maniac who killed tens of millions of indigenous people for the benefit of his people. These contradictions amongst African people, for me, it's kind of weird that we, Also, African people here in my country too, we have Armed Forces Remembrance Day. I say to my people all the time, tell me one of our freedoms that was secured for you by the African or Nigerian armed forces. Everything that we have achieved as African people in terms of our freedom and standing in this world has been by going against our military. But yet we want to celebrate Armed Forces Day. For what purpose? Because we've been celebrating oppression for the powerful has been normalized in the mindset of the people. It doesn't have to do with Christianity or Islam, really. Even though they are pacifist religions to a certain extent for African people, I believe that it is just that we are also programmed through education, right, to align with the elites, to believe that might is right, So even here in America, they can do the armed forces, whatever, Veterans Day, and African Americans are out here, supporting the troops that go all over the world, killing black people and brown people and putting down black African revolutionary movement and African resistance globally. So it is not just from the religious perspective that this has happened. It has also happened because we've gone through the oppressor's education. The elites who are the oppressors of society. And that's why I think Paulo Freire did a great job in the pedagogy of the oppressed, at least explaining that part that we are oppressor and oppressed at the same time because we have been educated by our oppressors. So we carry their arguments. We live their arguments. So that's why it is easy for people to contradict themselves in this way.
And speaking about education, how's the Nigerian education school system?
Oh, wow. The Nigerian educational system is quite sinister. It's sinister in the sense that, it is very white, but it's black owned. This is one of the arguments I always like having with my brothers when I'm here, and I tell them because there are many African Americans, or rather many Africans in America, because this African American thing is an oxymoron. Africans in America argue that they don't get loans from the banks because they are white. That the cops kill them because they are white. And the schools are against them because they are white. I'm like, hold my beer. Let's go to Lagos. All the banks in my country are black. You still can't get a loan. All the schools are black and you're still taught white information. All the cops are black and they still kill us every day. In fact, no white man has ever been shot in Lagos by a police officer.
But your thing is an elitist vibe, right?
What did you say?
Your thing is an elitist vibe.
No,
like
it's an institutional thing. The institution of banking, that word institution for me means exclude Africans. Anywhere you find the word institution, it means exclude Africans. Academia in itself means exclusion. So when you now add institution, exclusion of Africans. So now we are excluding not only Africans, but African information. So when you go to, for example, we are taught that Mungo Park discovered River Niger. As if black people, this is in Africa, they are teaching we as African kids that this Englishman has come from America to discover this river we bathe in, wash our clothes in, swim in. For centuries, we didn't even know. Our ancestors are so stupid. They didn't know they were in front of a river. Mungo Park had to come from England to say, listen, Africans, this is a river. Water that flows. So the education is the same because whatever it is that is institutionalized in this world or except has gone through a Pan-Africanist revolutionary process to be reclaimed for African people is there to remove us from ourselves, one way or the other.
I wanted to talk about two tunes actually from the album Many Things. And this is biased, but these are my two favorite tunes of yours, right?
Oh, wow. For my first album, I need to work hard and get you to come forward to me.
No. Don't feel no way. But I think Africa and African Problems, right? I think they're brilliant tunes because they sum up everything far out. You get what I'm saying? Like they really cover all issues. It's it has a groove, it's palatable, but also a person that's unfamiliar with their reality are able to understand the socio-economic, political situation that they're in. Just tell me the backstory about Think Africa.
Okay. Well, this is
if you remember.
I remember. I remember whatever it is that made me write most of my songs. And I was writing my first album. And being in the tour bus with the band when we're traveling, I was in the middle of writing the album, and we're having a huge conversation. But when I don't like talking about this first album because yes, I was 24, I knew stuff, but my consciousness was still quite weak. So anyway, and we're discussing development, and then for me development was, roads and buildings and basically for me I was just saying in the song like, man, we need to do a song. I need to do a song where I'm just discussing about how we are so behind Europeans in terms of development. And that's really where the idea for Think Africa came through. Like, without us thinking effectively about saying, Africa as a thought, like not just as a byproduct of a thought, no, like the main thought, then how can we really develop? Where do we go from here? Because we are so behind, you know. And that's what I was just trying to push forward with Think Africa in that song, you know, the fact that we've been made to be so underdeveloped. I know it's simple, but that was the backstory.
Simple, very
Think Africa.
effective and powerful, all right? As a true musician, right, and a person who has been among some of the world's greatest musicians, do you believe the dependence on computers instead of instruments has hurt music across all genres of music?
Okay. This is a very, very interesting question. And I like when people say this. I don't think anything is wrong musically. I think the computer has socialized music to the extent that it has really helped some musicians come off their high horse. You know, because nothing slaps you to reality like when everybody can do what you're doing. You know, anybody today can be a musician. You know, this is the power of this is what technology has done with music. You know, and also with film to a certain extent that with a little bit of training, anybody could be a director today. You could make a movie. You know, you just need a little bit of training. You could make a really good movie, have a good story, you know. So this socialization of things for me is never really what is wrong. It is how capitalism uses that against the people that is the issue. So now, because anybody can be a musician, means the system can get people that do not really have the love of music, but want the trappings. And they can use those people to spread the message of the system. I think this is the only thing that, for me, the new era of music is doing that's not so positive, because people that are not truly musicians, because to be a true artist means there must be a link between you and your natural environment, that you must have an impact. You want, be whatever it is, you must want to mold the world in a certain way. So, but what this computerized music has done through socialization of the art of music making, that it has allowed corporations to find people that do not have this calling and make them like an employee and like a worker, like a manufactured good, you know, that now music can also be manufactured to fit any narrative. You understand? Like even narrative that real musicians naturally would not want to engage with. You understand? So that for me is the only thing. For me, listen, the more the merrier. You know, let's all have a good time. Let's party. And also because, also the educational perspective of it. People are supposed to help young people, because music is also a way of developing your mind, like mathematics, like writing essays, like physics. You know, music is also a science that develops the mind in a certain way, and that people are losing this perspective in the world today because a lot of young people are not becoming instrumentalists, rather they're becoming technically good at, you know. So maybe that part of the brain is not being helped in the education because people are not really engaging musical instruments to learn to be musicians, you know. Yeah.
I want you to explain the two different types of Pan-Africans who want to improve Africa.
What did I say? I say a lot of things.
One was an exploiter. I'll give you that one. If you
okay, definitely. Because there are definitely two types of Pan-Africanists. Those that exploit the image of Pan-Africanism, you know, for their own personal gains and benefit, which is the majority of all Pan-Africanists out there, you know. And I'm telling you, that's why the mainstream is happy to embrace such people, because they know their theories are not fully formed. You know, they are not real students of the struggle. You know, the aesthetics. I mean, there was one time Jay-Z was Che Guevara. He did the whole thing as well. Remember? Listen. But there are also those that are truly committed. You know, that really want, that are truly giving themselves for the betterment of the people. You know, so yeah, definitely there are two types of Pan-Africanists out there: those that do it for the aesthetics, and those that do it for the real struggle.
Your father has a famous quote, right? Music is the weapon of the future. But I also heard you say one time that music is limited on influence. It's really on the journalist. Can you explain that?
Well, that's not what I said. When people put too much pressure on artists today, like musicians have to change the world, we act like it's just the musician's duty. We act like the journalist has no duty to change the world too. We act like the doctors have no duty. See, no matter what I sing in my songs, no matter what I try to inspire, right, as a musician, if all musicians in the world started singing like positive songs, like heal the world, whatever, if the doctors of this world do not want to heal the people, if the engineers do not want to engineer a better world, if the journalists don't want to write the truth, if the who else? The no, who else is out there? The cops, the lawyers don't want to enforce justice, then there's so little music can do. Music can create the inspiration, but we also need all other social sciences and professionals to align with the people. You know, when I look at the world today, I really feel like doctors feel like they have no say in this. Like all they have to do is go to the hospital and treat who can afford it. They've done their best. Lawyers can go to the courts and represent the people with money, while poor people, even though they are innocent, cannot get justice anywhere. Rich, guilty people are walking out of courtrooms every day. You know, journalists can manipulate the truth to suit the narrative of the rich people of this world and neglect to tell the reality to the rest of us, then what can music really do to change the world? And I think the professionals of this world know that music is a good scapegoat. The artists, the entertainers, you know, that they don't have any responsibilities. You know, oh, why are the artists putting out all this? Why are this? You know, like, well, what are you doing in your hospitals and your courtrooms and in all your places of work? You know, it's definitely worse than what I see on TV.
How has your daughter changed your perspective on life?
Oh, wow. My daughter has made me afraid to die. You know, before I used to live like, man, I can't wait to get out this bitch. I'm done. You know, every time I'm in the plane and like there's a turbulence, like I'm like, let's go. You know, but I don't think like that anymore. You know,
But
I'm like,
before you
when the
continue,
plane goes, I'm like, don't
bef-
play.
before you continue, why did you have that vibe before in regards to just this ready to die vibe?
It wasn't a ready to die vibe. I just didn't care. Like, if it's happening, let's go. You know. But right now, I feel like there's so much I still want to extend to her. You know, and she's like my personal responsibility. So I don't want to like cop out of my responsibility. You know. So yeah, that's the main thing she's changed in me. She's made me serious about staying around. But this is different. I've never had suicidal thoughts, you know, but I've never also been afraid to be right in the eye of it, you know, as well.
All right, I want to talk about hypersexualization in Nigeria, right? Many areas are just over sexualized. Is that taking place? I'm familiar with other countries because I spoke to someone specifically about what's going on in Ghana. Are you guys experiencing that in Nigeria also?
Of course, the hypersexualization of the black world, you know, and this is what I was telling you about the computer music before, you know. So, for example, my father was a very sexually explicit guy, right, with his music. But with his relationship with his women, he always wanted to let the world see the cultural connection. And I feel like your sexuality is also a part of being a human being. If you're an artist and you see you're sharing your life with the world, it's okay if you share your love, you know, and all of that. You know, let's keep nothing secret. It's fine. I love that in art. You know, but what is different today is that when everything is built around only our sexual relationships. Like, we cannot be deeper than that. Just the way African men cannot be are only as good as the things they can afford, the European things they can afford. You know, is one of the infantilization of who we are as men, as African men. You know, we are what we buy. You know, as African women, we are who wants to focus. So for me, this, and for our narrative to be circled around these two things. You know, so now the man that can buy all these European things must be the one that all these women like, you know, and the woman with all these kind of assets and attributes, whatever, that they've constructed this imagery of beauty, then all these men that have these things gravitate towards her. And this is the narrative and the relationship between these two kind of people. You know, this African man that can afford everything and this African woman that everybody wants to sleep with. The relationship that they have dominates our society. So that is the true hypersexualization of it. It's not the image. It's that the relationship between this idea of African people, you know, bad African girl, this rich African guy, and their relationship is what dominates our psyche, our spaces, our social media platforms, whatever, you know. So for me, that is what is dangerous. You know, that is what is really dangerous, is that it is this relationship only set as a model relationship. It is set as the thing to talk about. Right now, for example, the topic in my country is that the Moroccan footballer Hakimi divorced his wife, and his wife, who was trying to get half of his property, found out that he put everything in his mother's name, so she couldn't get anything, and everybody's discussing these two people for 3 days now. You know, for me, that is the real problem. You know.
And a disturbing part about it is based on the myth. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the famous quote from the World Bank saying that there's I think you have a better chance to win the lottery. So that's the part, like, all this is based off of myth. That's the whole.
It is
exactly.
It is a fantasy. We dominate our conversations with fantasy, you know, and for me it's crazy. You know, I mean, I see some of our most prominent African people in America, you know, on TV or on their social media platforms, and they're analyzing African issues using the Godfather movie. I'm telling you, grown African men believe more in the philosophies and ideology of Michael Corleone than they do Nkrumah. These are the conversations that dominate our society, where we want to shape ourselves and mold ourselves like the dons of Italian movies. So it ties into the criminalization of our people, which is what they call sexualization. Because for me, all this is because the society and African people have a criminalized relationship where the system continually fucks us and we pay the price for it. You know, that's the only sex happening here. African people being fucked by the system and we paying for it, you know, and you know, all the illegitimate kids and whatever, and all the responsibilities of these kids that the system is having through the black people that it is fucking, is just hipped on only us, and the system is like, oh, it's not our business, you know. Because certain people are kind of pushed to the fore of the conversation of African people, who then elevate other people's narratives in the consciousness of the majority of our people. You know, so as I said, the quotes of Michael Corleone and the Godfather are more prevalent in our society today than, say, Sankara's ideas and doings, and, you know, things like that. You know, many African people want to conform themselves like dons rather than revolutionaries. And this is the issue.
Please speak about the human rights violations by the Nigerian police force.
Where do I start? Where do I start? I mean, even before I came here, I still got into a squabble with some cops on the streets. You know, if you are living in Nigeria, trust me, except you are a part of the oppressor community with your own escort, with your own police, because most people, you know, do that because you can pay for police. I don't. I don't even want to.
It's a big culture over there, private security also, right?
Yeah, but the public are paying for it, but they're using them for private, you know, work. You know, cops guarding any private citizen that can pay for it. You know, it's a form of oppression as well. So anywhere you go, you don't queue, you don't do whatever the cops do. Anyway, but the situation with the policing of African people anywhere in the world is the same. This is one of the things that we as African people must understand, that our reality is not different anywhere we find ourselves in this world. The relationship between the Nigerian police, although they are all African men like you and me, you know, but not all skin folk are kin folk like John Henry Clark said, you find that it's the same relationship with the African people have with white cops here. Because that is the institution. It's an anti-black institution, anti-African institution. So it's one of oppression, domination, brutality, extrajudicial killings, you know. Yeah, we don't feel safe around our cops, definitely. There's nowhere in the world, I don't want to act like the Nigerian police is peculiar in its relationship to African people than any other police force in this world. British police, French police, South African police, Australian police, Indonesian police, Japanese police, Chinese police, whatever they are, you know, in this world, have the same relationship towards African people.
And I always want to ask you this, like, based on the history your family has had with the police, why have you decided to stay in Nigeria?
Oh, well, because in my family we are trained not to run. You know, we are really, really, in a way, I won't say they were trained not to run. We are raised to be, we are so African. I'm telling you, I mean, I couldn't see myself, I couldn't fit in if I lived here. I always told my friends, if I lived in New York, I'll be shot by the police maybe like 2 years down the line. I mean, my first interaction with any police officer in America, I'm getting shot. You know, because there's no way, there's no way, you know, I'm accepting whatever. Sit on the floor, no way. Why would I sit on the floor? Like, you're not going to dehumanize me for any reason whatsoever, you know. So I know that it's definitely going to end up in me getting shot, you know. But in my country, I know there's no cop that's going to tell me sit on the floor. I'm like, are you crazy? You know.
And with the, I always know it's a balance with the police force. Do you have some Irie brethren in the police force?
No, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, people do what they do. I have friends. I have even advisors in the police force. People that are so close to me, I could call them like my advisor. You know, yeah, definitely. I have friends. I have a couple of friends that are cops. But how you know is that it is not their entirety. So they are cops because they made that decision before they knew any better. It's their career now, but they understand they're still in touch with their humanity. And I think that is one of the things that institutions don't like. So in the rank and file of any institution, in any bank, in any police force, in any school, in any government office, in any civil service, you find humans. But where you will never find them is at the top of such institutions. You understand? So it will be difficult for me to tell you I have a friend that is a commissioner of police in any state, or assistant inspector general of police, or any of these big wigs that run states and are controlling the system. You know, I could never tell you I knew any one of them. You know, or I know any bank MDs or general managers of any banks. But I do know some bank clerks and bank tellers. You know, yeah, they are my good friends, and some branch managers of some banks are my friends. You know, but I wouldn't tell you I know any big shareholder of any bank in my country. No, I don't think. Maybe some of my friends are that rich and they just, you know, hide because we African people, I don't know where we learn this, hiding our money from our friends. We are good at it, you know. It's when your friend die, you realize how rich the motherfucker, like, nigga. You know, so anyway, so yeah, you find good people in every organization. But what I found out that in most institutions, they make sure that the humanity doesn't make it to the top. You have to be a rational man to run these institutions, you know. And as Marimba Ani said, you know, I've never seen anybody in this world who rationalizes a good thing, you know. So you have to find people who believe in lesser evils, you know. And as soon as you believe that there's a lesser evil, that means your humanity is gone.
Next question, right? Do you ever get discouraged and feel like your mission is in vain?
No, because it's not my mission. It's not my mission. It is the mission for the restoration of African sovereignty and African dignity. We stand on the shoulders of so many people before us. You know, like, my mission, no way. It is the mission. And whether we like it or not, it is why we're all here. The collective consciousness of African people is one of, in fact, I can say we're going through collective post-traumatic stress disorder. We, as African people globally, have PTSD because of our collective experience in this world, you know. And the individualism that is sold as a tonic to ease this PTSD is not a real solution, you know. Capitalism is selling individualism to a lot of Africans to say, well, you just do you as long as you are. But then they find out down the line, nobody does you, and there's no you. And they find out at the end of the line that I am just as protected as the least protected of my people. You know, so everybody realizes that. You know, Paul Mooney said is your nigga wake up call. Or was it? No, nigga wake up call. That's what Paul Mooney said. Yeah, you know, so everybody gets that. You know, so for me, I always truly think that our duty is not one of seeing victory the way in the eyes of the European, who is a winner takes all, might is right ideology. This is not the African way. We must see our victory as being able to pass on the mission, pass on the message, pass on the struggle, because we know that our mission is righteous. So definitely, just like the Taliban, you know, victory is ours at some point. You know, so as long as the message and the torch does not die in my generation, then I believe that I am victorious. If the next generation is able, through me, through others doing the work, to understand that the work is there and able to pass the work on until we get to that generation where there's a like the 60s, the generations that gave us the freedoms that we enjoy today that people forget about, you know, because everybody's talking today about having a seat on the table, forgetting that that table was made by the blood, you know, and bones of your ancestors. And in fact, what is being divvied up on the table is the carcass of your people. You know, our duty when we stormed it, when the Nkrumahs and the Sankaras and the Malcolms and the Martin Luther Kings of this world, you know, and the Che Guevaras and the Fidel Castros, you know, of this world, from Suharto and all the great freedom fighters and revolutionaries, you know, Chairman Mao, Kim Jong, everybody that has stood up against this system understood of breaking down that door, we're going to also destroy that table. And this is why they are the enemies of the system. This is why the system killed many of them. Because they refused seats on the table. They're like, no, we've broken down the door, burst into this room, not to sit with you. We're coming here to fuck up whatever it is you're doing in here, especially that table. You know. But now we are being told that, you know, our talent is for us to sit at the table. You know, we forget that we are all children of sacrifice. That if so many millions of Africans did not sacrifice their lives, there's nothing we'll be doing today. We'll still be where we were in the 60s and stuff like that, you know. For us to go to school, people had to die. For us to vote, people had to die. For us to do anything, enter the bus, be doctors, be lawyers, go to school, somebody had to pay the price for that, you know. So yeah, that is what we forget today. You know, that is what we forget, that we are children of sacrifice and we still have a lot to pay forward. You know, many people want to sit at the table, many people want to knock the ladder over, you know, thinking since we're in the room, you know, and we forget the multitudes of our brothers that the room cannot contain. You know, that we need to build our own houses, not be stuck in this room looking for this table, you know. So we are children of sacrifice. And again, once again, we will remember that. The way our people in the 40s, 50s, 60s, you know, and the movement has been betrayed, 70s, 80s, 90s. Now there's a reawakening. Slowly again, there'll be a new generation of Africans, you know, that will now move this struggle, you know, forward in a more major way, you know, to where Africans can now be actually thinking about our own sovereignty.
Who is your favorite African hero?
Ah, wow. Favorite. I don't have any favorites. Let me not put it that way. I don't have any favorite African hero, but
Let me hold on. Let me reword it.
Okay.
Which one inspired you the most?
Aha. Well. Oh wow. Now that's even harder than I thought it would be. Alive today, my biggest Pan-Africanist inspiration is actually alive today, and I'm going to give him his flowers because it's good that we give people their flowers. His name is Diallo Kenyatta, and he lives in Chicago. He has a show on the radio show called Bro Diallo Show, and he's also on YouTube. You can check him out. I call him my political mentor because he's doing the work right now, you know, and he's so inspirational in terms of his views, his theories, and how he's able to link our global struggle. Because one of the things I notice is there's so much division. I come here, even here right now in America, you know, my friends that are Nigerians are talking like they're different from African Americans here, you know. All these ADOS, FBA, you know, and as I said, this is because many of the people in the front of our discussions of Africans discuss from fantasy, that fantasy we discussed, and also from paid narrative of our oppressors to spread that narrative. You know, Africans are supposed to come here and pick up the mantle. Our cousins have been here under slavery. They fought all the way to the 60s to get us here. Without what African Americans have done in the 60s, Africans from the continent can't even come here to work. You can't come here and go to school. You can't do anything here because we weren't allowed. Africans here had to pay the price. They are exhausted. You're supposed to come here and pick up that baton. If we knew our story, if we were connected, if we were historical people, that is the mission. But because the African elites themselves are the oppressors of African people, and many of the Africans that come here, majority of them are from the oppressors of Africa, you know? So they are happy for that division to foster, you know? So when I find people that are able to see through that and build real consciousness that is globally Pan-African, I respect that. But then in the real world of our people, my cosmic mother is Marimba Ani, you know, the author of Urugu. I speak to her all the time. So yeah, I have many people that are so important to me in the struggle, but I think these two people are the most important. My most influential historian in terms of Pan-African political freedom fighting history is Chiwenzu and Kwesi Amra Kwe, you know, the author of 2000 Seasons. You know, so yeah, those are my people, like my core people. Then in the dead, Frantz Fanon, Thomas Sankara, my father. Yeah, those are the three main. And Paulo Freire, the author of The Pedagogy of the Oppressed.
I want to speak about the myth of economic and political African progress of Africans on the continent and the diaspora. No, I get it.
No, it's true. It's a myth. It's
People
a myth.
really get angry with me when I try to explain to them that. But tell me about all this progress, and I'm asking
There's no
them
progress.
where,
It's a myth. Even European progress is a myth because it's not defined. You know, they want you to see yourself as like, okay, progressing towards what? Progress for who? Define where we are going. Is there a definition of where we are going? You know, but the African one is even more blatantly false. You know, the richest African man in the world is Nigerian. Richest black man, I say black, but I say African. The richest African man in the world is a Nigerian man. His name is Aliko Dangote. You know, what is his worth? About $20 billion, $25 billion. Microsoft is a $1 trillion company. The whole Nigerian economy is $500 and something billion. You know, so when people are talking about this progress, wealth, you know, I mean, and this is why they talk about it, because they don't have it. You know, those that have it don't have to talk about it. You know, and it's also the powerless that wants to always show his power. You know, and that's why, you know, the people are so loud talking about this great African power they are using these days that does nothing for African people. You know, maybe people are mixing up negotiations with corporations for power.
I think it's a thing where they're mixing up tolerance for acceptance.
Yeah, exactly, because the world now is stuck on tolerance. You know, everybody is advocating for tolerance, like tolerance is a good thing. And this is one of the things I call manufactured facts. You know, like, why are we fighting for tolerance when we should be fighting for acceptance? You know, because tolerance is very dangerous. It can be removed at any time. You know, and it is also always to an extent. And tolerance also reinforces a minority. Because for tolerance to be accepted in society, you know, for tolerance to be a justifiable attitude towards the other, there must be an other. We cannot be one and you tolerate me. No, you accept me. If I'm one with you, you accept me. If I'm your brother, your sister, your cousin, if you see me that way, you accept me. But when you tolerate me, because you see me as different. So this reinforces this different, you know, and it's also a religious thing, you know, because religion is also dogmatic, right? We don't expect those that are religious to accept the humanity of others that do not fall within the dogma of their religion, you know. So I think that was a very good question you asked, because we as African people, we are truly, I mean, that's why I really dislike the African global elites, because they play a big role in pushing these toxic philosophies and ideas and narratives among the black masses, the African masses, you know, poisoning our minds, also our natural way, you know, is being where is the word I'm going to use here? Corrupted, is being infected, is being eroded by this new way, you know, that we are also being sold by our elites. Yeah, you're very right. You're very right in that aspect, you know, because it's truly a myth. It's truly a myth. In my country, for example, I got into trouble when I said Lagos doesn't belong to Yoruba people. Yoruba people lost their minds. They were angry because we don't own so much. Why are you not taking away our Lagos? First of all, it's called Lagos. You know, this place one time might have been African. See, this is why they distract us. So Africa, for example, is 70% foreign owned. Still. Till this day. Exactly. In my country, for example, 70% of the arable land is used to grow cash crops. So now, this is how you understand the powerlessness of Africans. That even our land we are not allowed to eat from our land. And these products are being exported. They have cash crops, you can't eat it. But Africans are hungry. It's not as if Africans are fed well, and now we are using the extra excess to do some trade. No, we are hungry, we need food. But still, European needs of their industry surpasses the need of Africans to eat. So Lagos, for example, 70% of the businesses in Lagos is foreign-owned businesses. Why are we laying claim to something that has been taken from us where we have to take it back? So when you think you own something that you don't own, you don't think you have to take it back. So Lagosians are being told by the elite in Lagos, who are giving crumbs also by the international, but the crumbs make them look rich to those that have nothing. So you see all these few African millionaires out there, but they're all employees. You understand? So the fact that they're employees acting like they're the boss. You understand? Just like the music industry, full of employees that call themselves boss. You know. These African people remove from the consciousness of young Africans the need to take back the economy of Africa. The biggest oil companies in Africa, are they African? The biggest telecommunication companies in Africa, are they African? The biggest manufacturing company, we don't manufacture, but the little we have, are they African? No. Everything that is anything, even the biggest TV companies in my country is not Nigerian. It's South African. But even in the South Africa, it's white South African. So that means it's European. Even though they call it South Africa, it's owned by the Europeans in South Africa. So what are we saying here? You know, even though we don't have a settler economy like South Africans do, where you have whites, they're actually running their business themselves, we have a situation in the whole sub-Saharan Africa where blacks are employed to run the business for them just like they were there themselves. Exactly. So many people don't know that.
Everyone says your father is the creator of Afrobeats, all right? Yet you once said Afrobeats has always been here. He was just able to translate it into a universal language. Can you elaborate more on that comment?
A universal language that we understand as humans. Okay, so I being a socialist, the original core, but I'm not a communist. You know, communism is another European way of appropriating something African, and suddenly, you know, it loses its African roots, its European content. We Africans are the original social people, you know. So in that aspect, I can't really believe anybody invented anything, because invention in this day and age is intrinsically tied to ownership, you know. And the truth is, nobody brought anything here. Whatever is here, okay, so this is the concept. This is how I see the world. This is how I see things. This is part of my spirituality. Whatever it is has always been. So even if this TV as it is right now did not exist maybe 500 years ago, and people that lived in those days didn't watch TV, it didn't mean everything to make this TV wasn't there. The idea, it was there. It's always been there, but it's always one person that the universe reveals it to, so that we can also see it, to put it in a way that we understand, to put it in a way that we can perceive. You understand what I'm saying? So whatever it is that we put together has already been put together millions of years before you got here. But it takes one of us, or a few of us at some times, to be able to interpret it in a way that we as humans can perceive. That's just what it is. The nature is the inventor of everything. Nature invents all, creates all, owns all, you know. And whatever it is that we are able to manifest and perceive in our reality, you know, so we can thank this person. So that's, for me, I give thanks to my dad for being able to decode, that's the word, decode Afrobeat. Now we can hear it, we can perceive it, but it doesn't mean that sound has not existed for millennials, you know. I mean millennia, no, that's it. Millennia is the plural of millennium. Yes, I still remember my English. So yeah, it hasn't existed, for whatever. So whatever the scientific nuclear bombs, whatever it is, the uranium, plutonium, whatever, it has always been there. But now, okay, you're the one that brought it together in the way it could go this way. But didn't mean that nature did not know it was there. Nature knows all,
And I wanted to ask also, was he inspired by James Brown in regards to the outfits of the band and also the amount of musicians he had playing with him? Just what the music needed.
No, I think in this aspect, James Brown saw a Fela show before Fela saw a James Brown show. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. That was my answer. James Brown saw a Fela show before Fela saw a James Brown show. So.
Said on February 18th, 1977, right? About 1,000 Nigerian soldiers attacked Fela's, how do you say it? Calacuta Republic?
Calacuta Republic, yeah.
Calacuta Republic, right? They burnt down the house, beating Fela and everybody in the compound. Did they throw this man's mother out the window?
Yeah.
They really threw her out the window.
Yeah, and I believe also, because this 1977, this was in the height of the Cold War. And she was Africa's only surviving leading socialist at that time with any kind of real political power and clout. So I think the attack was really 30% on Fela and 70% on her, because Obasanjo was really a CIA stooge. He was really Jimmy Carter boy. And I think that woman was really the target that day, because why would you throw a 70-something-year-old woman? How could she have resisted
Hold
this?
on, fire. They threw her out the window?
Yeah.
I always thought it was a thing where, like, an embellishment where they were trying to make the situation.
No.
They really threw her out the window.
Threw her out the window. But that's what happened. That's my theory, because why else would a young military man, how could she be resisting that you need to throw a 70-something-year-old woman out the window if you had not been told by some superiors that you had to do that? I think it was some kind of, I think she was part of whatever was happening that day. Taking her out of the picture had something to do with it.
And she was hospitalized straight through after that.
Yeah, she didn't recover from the injuries. Nah.
And how much did that impact your father? Because he made about 4 songs on that incident alone, right?
Yeah, man, but the song, but then that changed his life, because I don't think Fela ever recovered from his mom, from that. He blamed himself. It really changed his life. He made him more spiritual, and then he started to seek a connection with her. It really impacted him greatly.
Can you elaborate more in regards to the spiritual aspect? Because I know he wasn't dealing with Christianity or Islam, right? No. So what was he dealing with?
African spirituality, and also in terms of connecting to the other world, now, while being alive, but wanting a connection with the ancestors, like it used to be. And the world today is too loud. So you need to begin to isolate yourself. You need to, oh man, my dad went through a lot in his own journey as well because of this incident. I'm telling you, I can't even begin to explain the things he sacrificed just to find that inner peace again, to find his mom again. His mom was his center, His mom really gave him, she was like his anchor to life. She was it, for him. She was that center of his universe, And the house was her house. That's something everybody did not know as well. The house did not belong to my dad.
Your mother's,
it was her house. It was his mother's house that she gave him as a gift, and he lived there. So she comes there regularly to keep him away from all the girls he kept chasing. So she was there on the day this,
All right, you were talking about the grandmother being the core and providing balance, right?
Yeah.
What was
both political and spiritual?
What was her view when he started to have numerous wives? Because he had one wife.
Yeah, first.
Then something, I don't understand what occurred where he had this idea where he should have numerous wives.
I mean, I think the more he embraced his Africanness, Fela also saw his. You have to understand that in the 60s, 70s Africa, the propaganda against Africanness was huge. We were just coming out of colonialism. We were basically monkeys. We never had any history. We never made anything. You know, the lies that were taught to Africans coming out of this era of our slavery and immense subjugation under whiteness were immense. Nobody wanted anything to do with being African. The best they could do was wear some African garb. You know, nobody wanted to touch anything African. Nobody wanted to even be identified as African, you know. So for Fela, culture became a weapon to be able to completely embrace that which everybody was so afraid of. To say, see, man, this is who we are. There's nothing wrong with it.
So he wanted to embrace every aspect of African culture.
The polygamy of it, the spirituality of it, whatever it is that everybody
the drip.
was
I always saw him in the drip.
Whatever it is you are also afraid of, you know, he wanted to live it and be like, you can't do this, you know. So for him, it was a statement, political statement, as well as a huge cultural statement. But his mother, you know, you have to understand, she was a reverend's wife, regardless of her socialist, Pan-Africanist struggles and political prowess. She was still a reverend's wife. She wasn't having that.
And two more questions. I wanted to touch on more where you said in his journey, because I know you would have to hear your stories from others, but during his journey to find his mother, did he ever connect to his mother while he was still alive during that spiritual journey?
He says he did. And the more I grew up, the more I realized that one has to take that as fact. You know, we must also come of this, our Europeanized concepts that we think we know everything. Professor Jerry Smalls said something very interesting when he said, you know, the arrogance of humanity today, that with this our barely 2,000-year-old science, we feel we know more than those that observed the world for over 100,000 years, you know, is laughable. You know, if one reads Iliad by Homer's book, the Iliad, many of the things in there are unbelievable. But he's writing it as a first-hand account that he saw these things. But in our reality today, the book was completely dismissed until Troy was found. So if Troy is real, what else is real? How much did Homer embellish? If we have to believe that this world as is shown to us is all that there is, that means we have to discount over 80% of what Homer says he saw with his own two eyes. Because before Troy was found, you have to understand that Homer was completely discarded as like this. Plato and the rest of them, like, this man must be lying, you know, this world never existed, this, you know. Because that world that Homer explained was the African world. It's the world that got Socrates killed as well, because the more he studied, because if you remember, Socrates was killed, why? He said he was spreading foreign ideology in Greece, you know.
Have you been able to experience any of the spiritual experiences?
I'm not looking yet.
No.
I'm not looking yet. Because the more I understand, my spirituality right now is just like my homeboy said, Vic Mensa in my tune, like ceremonial, you know. I feel there's so much I have to do, like this world, like if one goes into searching, one has to, like, if you stare into the abyss, it stares back, right?
You have to be totally devout to that.
Yeah.
And you couldn't.
Yeah. Because I saw my dad in it. It's a full-time thing.
All right. You have a tune here, Underground System, and Passa, right? Side A, 30 minutes. Side B, 30 minutes. Bro, what was up with these long songs? I was just trying to figure this out. Like, why were the songs so long? Was it a publishing thing or is it just a vibe thing?
It had nothing to do with. It was Fela saying, as I said, you know, everything that this man did was to just tell people, we don't have to do what these Europeans say we should do. Music doesn't have to be 3 minutes. because the European attention span is 3 minutes long. That the European cannot sit down and keep a tune for longer than 3 minutes don't mean we have to conform to that. You know, Africans used to play one song for hours, and everybody, before the song is over, every single person in the village square will dance to that one song before the song can be over. And we're all entertained by that one song for as long as it took, you know. And why is it that it's only Mozart that can have a song that is an hour long, you know, and compose their symphonies, and these people sit down there, listen to it, and then they complain when you do your song for, is it because they're trying to say you don't have the musical capabilities of Mozart and Bach, and these their own greats, Africans can't create the same, you know? For him, everything was pushing against the narrative, you know? And that's why he used to call his music, not, you know, we call Fela's music Afrobeat. Fela himself called his music classical African sound.
Seriously.
So I'm giving you I'm giving you a nugget right now. I'm telling you, Fela said this is classical African sound. That's what he called his music, you know.
And that ties into what you said, because everything he wanted to, because you said in traditional, if you were playing music in the area, it would be an hour, and he just kept that same vibe straight regardless.
Regardless, you know, that for him was what it was, you know, that this is the classical sound of Africa.
And this is the last one, right? I just always wanted to know, when we hear about freedom fighters in regards to music, by default, people usually go to Bob Marley, right? Do you think that's just a industry thing, why your father doesn't get as much exposure as other people?
No. I think Bob Marley is you have to understand, Bob Marley is kind of he was a fiery individual, but pacifist on his music. So the system likes that, because you can listen to Bob Marley for 10 years straight and the world will not burn. So that's okay. The system, you know, the system knows that it is fragile. It is those that believe in the system that do not see its fragility. That's one of the things why this global wide domination capitalist thing is living beyond even when it's supposed to. Because it is humble to the extent that it knows it is fragile. It is not, it doesn't deceive itself on that aspect. It knows it is extremely fragile. So whatever it is that can break it, that can shake it, that can cause any harm, you know, to this is delicate self, you know, it doesn't allow, it has no tolerance for such. No tolerance whatsoever, you know. So I feel that's one of the genius of this system, understanding its own fragility.